Hey guys, Soulless Reviews here, and throwback to 2010 when Cee Lo Green had us all infected with his hit single, Fuck You, or for the younger viewers, Forget You. Following up that hit single, he released The Lady Killer, which also dropped in 2010, and kind of made people turn heads to Cee Lo Green, not necessarily recognize him for being a great artist, but just kind of make him notice that he was there. And because he has somewhat entertaining vocals, they decided, hey, let's put him on The Voice. And if you don't know, The Voice is like a singing show, it's like American Idol, and essentially it's just 4 judges who get to pick a contestant based on their voice. One of them does, and then they get to mentor them throughout the show and see who wins in the end. But what happened? Shortly after Cee Lo Green joined The Voice, he actually was booted off for some reasons that I'm not particularly fond of talking about. However, while under the contract of The Voice, he did manage to drop one Christmas project in 2012, but that was during his duration of The Voice, which shortly, when The Voice ended, it was a little bit before his career ended on The Voice. So you would think Cee Lo Green, being a man of some decent vocals, would try and put himself in the booth and create some creative music for us as listeners to keep his relevancy, even though he's not on The Voice anymore. Well, no, he decides to make his own TBS show called The Good Life with the Goody Mob, which was what he was a part of before his solo career as Cee Lo Green. A reality show about him partying and buying tigers and all that bullshit. Nobody wants to see that. Like, who even cares at that point? So, what do you know? That show got cancelled, and now Cee Lo Green is in a rut. He has gone 3 years without releasing any music. He has no technical music relevancy at this point, and if he tries to go for another media show, then he's surely not going to make it all that far. So he turns to what he should have done after The Voice ended, and he decides to drop another project, and thus we have Heart Blanche. Personally, I'm not that big into Cee Lo Green's vocals. He made appearances on T.I.'s Heavy as the Head and Tech Nine's Something Else, and I wasn't all that fond of the tracks that he contributed to. Honestly, not my favorite artist out there, but I do recognize that he has some entertaining vocals. I mean, I don't hate him, but I don't necessarily love him either. He's kind of mutual for me, kind of like Ellie Goulding was. So, I'm going into this with optimism. I'm kind of hoping that he can pull through with some music so we can recognize him as a musical talent once again, but I guess only time will tell. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I am going to listen to Heart Blanche, and then afterwards, I am going to tell you guys just how I feel about it. Alright guys, so what do we get with Heart Blanche? Well, I don't really know. I'm a little impartial on this album. You see, Cee Lo Green actually had my attention at the beginning of this album, and I was actually pretty impressed the fact that he was able to capture my attention and get me grooving along to the musical instrumentals that he chose towards the beginning of this project. However, after he made his ode to Robin Williams, it kind of slid off. There were a couple tracks after Robin Williams that were alright, but then towards the latter half of this album, I was really feeling underwhelmed. It honestly felt like 16 tracks was just a little too long for Cee Lo Green, and he was wearing himself thin trying to create subject matter for that many tracks long, when in reality he probably should have stopped at Robin Williams, or, considering that short, maybe go 12 tracks, not really 16. One thing you might detect immediately from Cee Lo Green's music, if you're listening to this album, is the fact that he seems to be using the same instrumentals over and over again, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just seems, towards the latter half of this album, it gets a little redundant, and it's not something that's all that enjoyable. But in the beginning of the album, actually throughout the whole album, you hear, like, the same drums and rock guitar throughout the majority of these tracks. There are some other unique kind of instrumental choices here and there, like the simple piano chords on Better Late Than Never, or the pan flute on Sign of the Times. But overall on this project, guys, you're really going to hear some rock drums and a rock guitar, along with multiple spots in this project where he includes a backup chorus, too. But of course, going along with these instrumentals, there is Cee Lo Green himself carrying his voice along, which at points does work to his advantage, but there are some points, like the latter half of this album, where he's just wearing himself thin, carrying himself for this long of an album. So there are props to be given here, because I was actually interested in what Cee Lo Green was saying towards the beginning of this project, and that's more than most people can say on their comeback records, considering this is a 3-year gap between he released any music. So needless to say, I was actually impressed in the beginning tracks, like EST 1980s, where it was a nice, funk feel. There was nice rock instrumentals, and he was explaining how he was living up the glory days, how the 1980s were a prime age for music, and how he enjoyed them so much when he was younger. The beat of that song was really catchy. Overall, the song was pretty infectious, and I found myself grooving along to it, and I was actually impressed that he was able to do that. And same goes for the next track, Mother May I. Now, that track wasn't as much as a catchy, kind of funky song. It took a more slower, soulful approach, but it still had a nice, deep bass guitar and a light funk feel to it. And I also really liked the theme of that song. It was really unique to me. Cee Lo in his younger days, he would kind of look up to his mom as a respectable figure. He wanted to be this free-spirited individual, but the one person he knew he had to get that approval from to allow himself to go out at night to have these crazy adventures was his mom. He wasn't going to do anything unless his mom gave him the approval to do it. And that song kind of exemplified the respect that he had for his mom. And not only that, but it also was a nice, smooth, slightly funk song, and I enjoyed it a hell of a lot. Even on the track Robin Williams, while not exactly living up to any, true ode songs like Who Killed Russell Jones by B. Dolan, it was still a nice track. He mentions in that song how he wants people to laugh off the pain, and although I did feel that was a slightly controversial lyric to possess because Robin Williams technically was Robin Williams, for those of you who don't know, was diagnosed with depression, but only after he died, after suppressing the depression, and he killed himself because of all that suppressed depression in his life, and he never actually sought help for it. So Cee Lo Green is essentially telling people that you need to express yourself. You need to kind of tell people you're having issues and work them out, laugh off the pain. And that's kind of what he was going for, although at the same time, laugh off the pain, although kind of meaning that, but at the same time, Cee Lo was talking about masking the depression and that just kind of laugh off the fact that you're having some issues. I don't fully agree with that statement. I don't think Cee Lo meant for it to be laugh off the depression, it's no big deal, but the way he expressed it via lyrics, it kind of came off that way, and I don't feel like it was said in the best way. I feel like he could have reworded it if he wanted to, but overall, I feel like it was a good ode, definitely a positive message in there, and it wouldn't have made Robin Williams turn over in his grave. It was definitely a nice track, and I compliment Cee Lo for making a track like that. It definitely was a good one. But like I said, guys, after Robin Williams, I started to lose interest, and it sounded like Cee Lo was too. On his track, Cee Lo Sings the Blues, not only is he blatantly just making a song what should we call the song where you're kind of going from a blues approach? Why don't we ironically call it Cee Lo Sings the Blues? LOL! No, that was pretty stupid. And the fact that his vocal projection on that song sounds pretty awful to me, too. But that was really the only spot where I was, annoyed and I didn't like the song. Other than that, the tracks just drag itself on. It shouldn't have been 16 tracks long, honestly, it really shouldn't have. By the time we got to Purple Heart's Soldier of Love, Cee Lo really sounded like he didn't give a shit about making this album anymore, and he was just trying to wrap it up, giving as much subject as he could so he could get, a lot of music out there, so people could be like, Cee Lo Green, why haven't you dropped an album in a while? He's like, I just dropped 16 tracks on your ass, go check it out. Well, alright, cool, we have 16 new Cee Lo tracks, but towards the end of this album, especially the last 3 songs, you don't sound like you're that invested in it, and you're just trying to wrap this up with as many songs as you can. And like I said, when Cee Lo Green stops really trying to put all that much effort into the latter half of this album, it becomes very evident of the instrumentals, the rock instrumentals, the guitar and the drums, and because he's been using those throughout the whole album, those instrumentals become evident and a little more annoying, because it's like, hey, Cee Lo, if you're not going to put the effort in vocally, at least you could pique our interest instrumentally, instead of giving us the same guitars and drums that you've been using throughout the entirety of this album, when in reality he doesn't do that, and it's kind of sad. Because where some of these songs may have not have caught my interest vocally, he probably could have picked it up if he picked some, interesting instrumentals, if maybe he solely let a piano take over. I know there was a piano chord, like I mentioned, on Better Late Than Never, but still, he never solely let a piano take over on any of these tracks. And that may not be Cee Lo Green's style. He's probably more of this rock-funk feel, but he probably could have experimented a little more than he did, sticking just to his basic formula on this album. So overall, what you can say about this album is the first half, up until Robin Williams at least, Cee Lo Green is putting it 100% full gear to make you remember why he's such a good artist, and that's something you should really appreciate. You should actually listen to this album, if not for the album as a whole, but just for the first couple tracks. It's a decent project, but seems to wither away as the album progresses. I can appreciate the work Cee Lo Green put into some of these tracks to kind of express who he is and kind of make note of that. Actually, on Cee Lo Sings the Blues, he's actually kind of, to me it sounds like he's making note of the fact that the disrespect he's kind of earning from people who are saying, Cee Lo, why aren't you dropping an album? Come on, drop some stuff. And he's kind of making note of the fact that people are wondering where he's at, and he's feeling a little blue about where his career is at nowadays. And I like him making note of that, but still, that really wasn't enough to completely save this album. So if you're debating listening to this album, maybe this review is going to influence you, I would say yes, go ahead and listen to it maybe once, because it's interesting to hear Cee Lo come back again and what he has to offer, because, especially the first half, it's kind of funky and it's infectious, but as it wears on, it just gets a little old. So if you've been waiting for a Cee Lo Green comeback record, then this might be exactly what you're looking for, but for me, someone who isn't exactly all that into Cee Lo Green, it was just okay. Some of the beginning tracks I'll find myself going back to as I separated them on a different playlist, but other than that, I don't think I'll be coming back to the album in its entirety anytime soon. And that is all I got for you guys. If you would like to like or subscribe, that'd be awesome. Really appreciate it, and till next time, Soulless Reviews.